Welcome back. I'm Sherrie, urban farmer and D-Town farm member.
I'm Nayomi, a farmer at D-Town as well.
Today we have some examples of fruits that we can save the seed from. Fruiting plants like our peppers that we picked, beans, some peas, and some tomatoes.
Each type of seed, really, or each fruit has a different method of saving the seeds. The plant will grow and it will change as it starts to develop its seeds. So greens will kind of grow nice and tall and get flowers and get seed pods, and that's what you save them from. And tomatoes and peppers are actually, they hold the seeds. So we're just going to show you the different methods that you can use to save them in a way that will store them properly for next season. So when you plant them, they'll be ready to go.
This is a bean pod, which has beans in it, and we just split these open and take the beans out, allow them to dry for the next season. So here we have some pea pods that we're going to be taking the seeds out of. This one's kind of browning a little bit, so we know it's ready. Oh yeah, it'll snap. So when we first take them out, they're nice and green looking, tasty, and then we let them dry. So they end up dried and sort of shriveled like these. Okay, so right now I'm going to cut open this pepper, slice it down the middle, and we're going to preserve the seeds from it. Pull it open. See all your seeds here? It's really easy to get these out. You can do it with your finger, or if you want to use a knife or something, you can. So they come out really, really easy. Just take them and all right, be done with peppers.
Today, I'm going to show you how to save seeds from some fruits with juice. The examples that I'm going to use today are watermelons and tomatoes. This also goes for other melons, and the reason why we'll save the seed in its juice is that it helps to break down a protective layer on the outside of the seed, so that when you're ready to plant it in the spring, you have a higher chance of the plant itself sprouting. If you don't soak it in the fruit, that's okay. I would just recommend saving more seed than you may think, just in case some of them don't sprout up in the spring. But it's also totally okay to save watermelon seed without leaving it in the juice, and save tomatoes without keeping it in the juice. You just may want to save way more seed just in case they don't sprout. But I'm just going to show you watermelon first. So just like you're going to eat the watermelon, you can cut it open. And the cool thing about saving seed with fruit is that you totally know what the seed looks like. We normally spit them out, or sometimes you eat them, but it's essentially the same thing. So we have seeds here, and you just kind of can pull them out, or you can cut a nice chunk of the fruit, being careful not to cut the seeds. And if you get a nice chunk out, you'll have some seeds in here, and you'll want to keep it in a container like so. You can use a plastic container, you can use a bag, you can use a glass container, and you'll leave it in here. You could totally leave it like this, or it makes it easier if you really kind of like mash it up. It's a little messy, but you mash it up so that the seeds sit in the juice and help to break down that layer and get a nice balance of bacteria. And when you leave it like this, the process that it's called is fermenting. It's not very complex. What it is that you just leave the juice, and the sugars will kind of start to mold a little bit. So it might smell, it might start to get some mold, but know that that's all good, because what it is it's breaking down the outside layer of the seed. So you'll leave it like this for a few days, maybe even a few weeks. Whenever you remember to get around to it, you can take the seeds out and the juice, and you'll strain it to collect the seeds. So you'll want to separate any of the flesh from the seed, and then we'll leave the seeds out to dry and prepare them for storage. Okay, so now I'm going to show you my favorite, which is saving tomato seed. And again, you can totally save the tomato seed without doing this fermentation process. The fermenting process is, again, just to improve your chances of having germination or having a plant sprout in the spring. And this is just the way that I've always done it. And so I just wanted to show that it's really important that if you have two different types of tomatoes, to keep them in separate containers. I really love labeling, but also just so when it goes forward in terms of planning your garden and when you know what to expect. This tomato is a green zebra tomato. Though it looks like it's green and unripe, this is actually a ripe tomato. So it's important that you save tomatoes when they're ripe. It's just easier that way. So what you do is the same as if you were going to cut a tomato. I like to cut it down the middle. And in a tomato fruit, there are always little chambers on the side. So there's the flesh, but then we also have chambers on the side. So what we're looking for in the fruit is the part that has all the seeds. So you'll cut the fruit open, and then on the inside you'll find this area that has lots of seeds surrounded kind of in a goo. So you'll squeeze it out, push it into your container that you're keeping them in, which again can be plastic, glass, or even a bag. And you'll leave it in here for sometimes up to a couple weeks, but you'll find a mold forming, a really thin mold forming on top. And then once you see that, you'll know it's a good time to rinse them off and separate the seeds from the goo and from the flesh, and then dry them and then get them ready for storage. I've just demonstrated here that I would save the green zebra tomato in one container and this Roma tomato in another container. But it just makes it easier when it comes time to planting your garden that you know this was this and this is another variety, because the seeds will look very similar when it comes time to plant. So we've demonstrated the actual methods that you use to remove the seed from the plant. Now we're going to talk about what you do once you have the seed.
Dry it out. Step one, for me, is always making sure your seeds are dry. We can't stress this enough. Being over dry is not a thing. So if you have your seeds sitting on your paper plate with the label on them, you let them sit there for a few weeks.
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize also how important it is to label. It could be as simple as just saying carrot, or you can get pretty more detailed and even say maybe who shared it with you, or the variety, or what you even liked about that carrot, so that when you're planning the garden for next season, you'll be like, oh, right, it was that one. Mm-hmm. If you have all your paper plates with your seeds drying, sometimes I even dry them on paper towels. Basically, you just want them to have enough space between them and on something dry, and you leave it out until they're very dry, or they look like the same as the seeds that you planted earlier in the season.
Absolutely. So we're harvesting the seeds, we're drying the seeds, we're labeling the seeds, and then we have to store our seeds. And what's the best way you'd say to store seeds?
Again, heavily emphasizing once they're totally dry. Then you can put your seeds in an airtight container. So that can look like something like a plastic container, a glass jar, even an envelope of any kind, just something that can help keep them away from moisture and safe and together. But with certain things, you want to be mindful that the seed that you're saving is heirloom, or open pollinated is another way that you'll see that labeled. That's important because that's a way that you'll know that the seed that you actually plant will look like the fruit that you actually ate before. So if you save a seed that is a hybrid, you may get the genetics, the plant and fruit may look more like one of its parents. But if you save an heirloom seed or an open pollinated seed, it's going to look like the plant that you saw and you saved seed from, most likely. So if you don't know that information, if it's a hybrid or heirloom, that's totally fine. I would still recommend saving your seed. But if you do know that information, then it makes it even more special that you know that the plant will look more like what it looked like when you ate it or when you saved it.